The world is watching in disbelief. A nation once considered the Kremlin's most loyal ally has just made a move that no one thought possible. Belarus, the quiet neighbor, the ever-faithful partner of Russia, has suddenly taken a stand. Reports are flooding in that Belarusian troops, once trained and funded by Moscow, are now marching against Putin's rule. What seemed unthinkable only months ago has become a terrifying reality for the Russian leadership. Something massive is unfolding in Eastern Europe, and the consequences could reshape global power forever. For decades, Belarus was seen as Russia's little brother, obedient, dependent, and always willing to follow orders from the Kremlin. Its leader, Alexander Lukashenko, often described as Europe's last dictator, built his power through fear and control, surviving countless uprisings and protests with Moscow's backing. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Belarus played a crucial role, allowing Russian troops to launch attacks from its territory. In return, Putin supported Lukashenko with money, weapons, and political protection. Their alliance seemed unbreakable, until now. But something has changed. Inside the Belarusian military, cracks have started to appear. Young officers, tired of corruption, lies, and being treated like Moscow's disposable soldiers, began to whisper. They watched as Russia's war in Ukraine dragged on endlessly, draining both nations of men and resources. They saw Putin tightening his grip, demanding loyalty not just from Belarus but total obedience. And for many inside Belarus, that was the last straw. It began quietly. Secret meetings, encrypted messages, a growing network of officers and soldiers who no longer believed in the Russian dream. They wanted independence, dignity, and a future free from Moscow's shadow. Then came the spark. A shocking order from the Kremlin demanding Belarus send more troops to fight in Ukraine's Donbas region. But this time, the answer was no. Belarusian commanders refused. Within days, protests erupted in military bases across the country. Soldiers marched not toward Ukraine, but toward their own capital, Minsk. By the morning of October 28th, the streets of Minsk were filled with the sound of boots, chants, and gunfire. The Belarusian flag, once a symbol of submission, was raised high alongside banners reading "No more puppets" and "Freedom for Belarus." The world watched in awe as hundreds of Belarusian troops declared that they would no longer fight Putin's wars. They called themselves the Free Belarus Army. Their message was clear: Belarus belongs to its people, not to Moscow. Putin's reaction was immediate and furious. Within hours, Russian state media called the Belarusian movement a Western-backed coup. Moscow warned of severe consequences for anyone who betrayed their alliance. Russian troops stationed along the border were placed on high alert. Intelligence sources claimed that Putin even ordered special forces to prepare for a rapid strike into Belarus to restore order. A chilling reminder of how the Kremlin deals with rebellion. But this time, things are different. The Belarusian people have tasted defiance, and they are not backing down. Civilian protesters flooded the streets in support of their army. Videos circulating online show thousands waving flags, chanting "Belarus will never kneel again." In one clip, a young soldier shouts into the camera, "We were told we fight for Russia's security. Now we fight for our own freedom." Those words ignited a fire across the nation and beyond. European leaders held emergency meetings. NATO called the situation highly unstable and warned Russia against any attempt to invade Belarus. Ukraine, surprisingly, offered quiet support, allowing Belarusian defectors to cross its borders for safety and coordination. Suddenly, Putin found himself surrounded by instability, a war in Ukraine to the south, a rebellion in Belarus to the west, and growing. Dissent even inside Russia itself. Experts are calling this a geopolitical earthquake. For years, Putin relied on Belarus as his buffer zone, a loyal outpost between Russia and the West. Without Belarus, the Russian military's western flank becomes dangerously exposed. More importantly, this uprising could inspire similar movements across other Russian allied states, Kazakhstan, Armenia, even within Russia's own borders. The idea that Putin's empire could crumble from within is no longer a fantasy. It's happening right now. Behind the scenes, Lukashenko's position is becoming desperate. Once backed by Moscow, he now faces the impossible choice: stand with Putin and risk civil war, or side with his own people and face Russia's wrath. Reports suggest that some of his closest advisors have already fled the country. State television stations have gone silent. The government's grip is slipping, and no one knows who truly controls Belarus anymore. Meanwhile, the Belarusian Free Army continues to grow. What started as a few hundred defectors has now become a nationwide force of thousands. Many are experienced officers who once trained under Russian command. They know Moscow's tactics, communication systems, and weaknesses. Their strategy is not to attack Russia directly, but to cut off its influence, dismantling pro-Russian networks, seizing military facilities, and taking control of communication hubs. It's a bold, calculated rebellion, one designed not just for Belarusian independence, but to send a message to the world: Putin's power can be challenged. As the days pass, the international community is being forced to choose sides. Western nations have condemned Moscow's threats and called for restraint. But behind closed doors, intelligence reports suggest that covert aid, supplies, communication gear, even cyber support is already flowing toward the Belarusian resistance. The message from the West is subtle but clear: this is your moment, Belarus. Don't waste. Inside Russia, the shockwaves are undeniable. Russian soldiers stationed near the border are confused and demoralized. Some refuse to fight their former allies. Others have reportedly defected, crossing into Belarus to join the uprising. Putin's propaganda machine is struggling to maintain control of the narrative. State TV insists that Belarus has been hijacked by Western spies, but millions of Russians aren't buying it anymore. The illusion of the unbreakable alliance shattered. Political analysts say this could mark the beginning of Putin's downfall. His strength has always depended on the image of control, of loyalty, of order. But with Belarus slipping away, that image is cracking. Even within Russia, opposition voices are growing louder, emboldened by Belarus's defiance. It's no longer just a war of tanks and missiles. It's a war of belief. The belief that Putin's empire is eternal is starting to die. And yet amid the chaos, one question remains: who will lead Belarus now? The Free Army claims it does not seek power, only freedom. But revolutions rarely stay pure for long. History shows that when a nation breaks its chains, power struggles follow. Will Belarus become a true democracy, or simply replace one dictator with another? No one can say for sure. What we do know is that the world is witnessing history unfold in real time. A small nation, long overshadowed by its giant neighbor, has finally stood up. And in doing so, Belarus has shaken the very foundations of Putin's rule. Whether this rebellion succeeds or fails, the message has already been sent. The age of blind loyalty to Moscow is over. As the dust settles over Minsk, one thing becomes clear: Eastern Europe will never be the same again. The dominoes are falling, and the Kremlin can no longer stop them. From the streets of Kiev to the barracks of Minsk, from the whispers in Moscow to the protests in St. Petersburg, a new chapter is beginning. One written not by dictators but by the people who refuse to be silent any longer. The world is holding its breath, because what happens next in Belarus could decide the future of Russia itself.